from studios of News Talk 1290 and newstalk1290.com. Mike Hendren, your host, 940-763-1290, 940-763-1290. So before the break, I started talking a little bit about this snake issue that we're having in Wichita Falls. And the city last week had put out a press release talking about how people were encountering snakes in the city limits. Apparently there were two very large rattlesnakes that were found in the city limits of Wichita Falls. Animal control went out and picked them up, collected them, whatever. And so that prompted this warning about rattlesnakes in the city limits. Well, okay, that's fair enough. And you do need to be careful of them. And we do have them in the city limits of Wichita Falls. We always have. I've killed a couple myself in town. It's been a long time, but I've done it. But over the weekend, I've noticed there's a number of news stories that have circulated around, and it's made not just local news and regional news, but now national news about this little town in Texas that is overwhelmed with rattlesnakes. I've seen them use the terms overwhelmed, overrun, besieged by, and all this kind of stuff. Come on. You talk about blowing it out of proportion now. I mean, we're really blowing it out of proportion. We're not, they're making it sound as though Wichita Falls is overrun with snakes and we need the Pied Piper or someone to come in and rid us of them. And that's not the case at all. We're not just overwhelmed with rattlesnakes. I personally think, they've always been around here. It's always been an issue. And you talk to anyone, I'll give you a good example. Many years ago, before Canyon Trails existed, you know where that little subdivision is off Seymour Highway, a little bit west of Tanglewood, is a subdivision called Canyon Trails. Very nice upscale homes. They started developing this about 20 years ago, maybe a little less than 20 years ago. Many years ago, I met a guy that used to go up there into that very area where all of these $350,000 to $600,000 homes exist now. Some of them may cost more than that now. And he used to hunt rattlesnakes in that very area. This is in the city of Wichita Falls, very close to the Wichita River, the big Wichita River. And this guy used to go down there and hunt rattlesnakes in town, in this area where all these beautiful homes are now. And we actually have a family member who has a family member who owns a home in Canyon Trails. And when they first bought their home there, it was common to find rattlesnakes in the driveway or trying to get into the garage. So this is nothing new, but these news stories are really kind of making it sound like we've just suddenly, because of the increase in the rat population, we've been overrun by rattlesnakes. Now, I've talked to two in the last week in the city of Wichita Falls who said, yeah, we've killed rattlesnakes on our property in town. Now, I've talked to several people in Electra, Iowa Park, Vernon, Childress, places that are, that are much more rural, that have had problems with rattlesnakes, and maybe slightly more than they normally would have. And then I've talked to other people who live out in the country, who've lived out in the country for decades, and they're telling me, I haven't killed a rattlesnake in 20 years out here. I haven't seen one. So I think the problem has been blown a little out of proportion by the media. They, you know how it is. I mean, the media at large likes to sensationalize crap. We like to take things, whether it's politics or snakes, it doesn't matter. And politicians and snakes, one and the same? Anyway, I digress. Anyway, the snake issue, I think, has been blown out of proportion. They've made it sound like Wichita Falls is overrun with rattlesnakes, and we're not. I don't think the problem's any worse than it has been in the past. Really, there may be a few more snakes coming up off the river and slithering into town because the rat populations have exploded. A lot more people are having problems with rodents than they ever had before, and that's because of all the rain that we had in 2015 and 2016. We're more than 10 inches above normal on rainfall for this year. And so the breeding habitat, the habitat in general for the rodents has been really good. Well, lots of rodents means a strong food supply for what? Snakes. So, of course, you're going to see more rattlesnakes present where there's more of a food supply. My point is, these stories are making it sound like the snakes have bred out of control, and now you can't walk one city block through the city of Wichita Falls without stepping on a damn rattlesnake. And, of course, that's just nonsense. And I really wish the media wouldn't blow those kind of things out of proportion. First of all, it scares a lot of people unnecessarily. It has scared a lot of people unnecessarily. And the easiest way to not get bitten by a rattlesnake is don't be stupid. Don't go out in your backyard and start turning over piles of wood or debris without looking what you're reaching for. You know, take a garden hoe and move that pile of lumber or tree limbs around first and see if something slithers out. And if it does, you chop its head off or shoot it or whatever you got to do. I don't care, but whatever you need to do. But you get my point. I mean, just be careful. A little common sense will save you a lot of pain and some extremely expensive hospital bills, because antivenom is not cheap. But for the most part, most of you probably aren't going to see a rattlesnake here in town. You probably aren't going to have an encounter with one. If you keep your property clean, if you do things to make sure you don't have a problem with rats hanging around your house, you probably won't have a snake problem. But all of these stories, and I've read, I don't know, 5 or 6 different stories over the last couple of days that allude to the fact that we've got this huge snake problem in Wichita Falls, and we just don't. We don't really have that serious of an issue here. So I really wish we could just not blow things out of proportion like that. We do it with politics. We do it with everything. I know the media just, it goes back to the old newspaper adage, if it bleeds, it leads. Well, okay, so if it's not bleeding, make it bleed, I guess, which is stupid, but they do it anyway.